Okay. Well, welcome to the Quick Pass. This is the very first Quick Pass session for Whiskey Platoon. As people filter in, just note this meeting will be recorded, so you can go back to this at any time and see the content. As you've been introduced to me via email, I just wanted to kind of give a little more of an introduction to myself and as your instructor. So my name is Aaron Wood, and I'm a veteran of the Air Force. I spent 21 years in the Air Force as a meteorologist, retired in 2020, and my first stop was co-platoon as a student. So I joined Lima Platoon and went through the boot camp and started working in the mostly in the public sector for defense contractors, and actually still doing that as our primary job, all over different disciplines when it comes to development, back end and front end development. I've dabbled in machine learning and data science as well. And so I've gotten quite a bit of experience quickly over the past few years. And also, as one of my previous jobs with Booz Allen Hamilton, I was teaching Python course, not much unlike this one, to some folks at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And so we teach them data science introduction so they can learn to write scripts on their own and help them get into the field. So it was great that I was able to find this and give back to veterans and work for you guys. And I'm just excited to be here and teach introductory level Python and get some folks into Whiskey Platoon through Quick Pass. Joining me, I know for this initial class, we do have Greg Drobny and Tish Johnson here, and they're going to also introduce themselves and give some information about co-platoon, and so I'll let them carry it away. Did you, Greg, want to go first, or did Tish?
I guess I can go first. I'm sure. Why not? You said my name first, so I'll go for it. Hey, everybody. So I'm Greg Drobny. I'm the student recruitment and outreach manager for Code Platoon. So generally speaking, I'm the first person that people talk to when they come to our organization. Some of you are coming in a little bit differently than we've done in the past. So if I haven't spoken with you already, pleasure to meet you. I'm going to put my email in the chat because I'm here kind of as a resource for everyone on any number of things, just to, if you have questions, I'm happy to facilitate a connection to the person who can answer if I'm not that person. But primarily what I'm here for tonight, Tish is the subject matter expert on funding questions. So I'm not going to steal any of her thunder. She's the guru there, knows way more than I do, which isn't hard. But primarily why I'm here is for any of you who are currently active duty. If you are on a skill bridge path, it's a skill bridge or CSP, if that is why you're here, I'm the official skill bridge point of contact. So I will be here to answer any questions you have about that. So take that email down that I just dropped in the chat. We'll be conversing with one another if you are active duty, because ultimately, bottom line, what you will need is command approval. If you're not active duty currently, you're already out. Don't worry about anything I'm saying right now. None of that is relevant. It has no bearing on you whatsoever. If you're active duty, you want to do skill bridge, you got to go through me to make sure we get your command approval in order, because that is bottom line for attending via skill bridge, is having that command approval, something that says from your commander, yes, this person can attend from X date to Y date. That is key to you attending during this time. So that will tie in, of course, to funding, which Tish is going to address in a moment. But again, please feel free to reach out to me with specific questions. We're here to answer questions now, but if you have questions that come up later, that's what I do, is help you navigate that skill bridge process, and I'm happy to work with you on that. So Tish, go ahead.
Thanks, Greg, and hello, everyone. Again, welcome. My name is Tish Johnson. I am the Student Support and Compliance Manager with Code Platoon. So basically, I handle all things related to funding, scholarships, VA payments, benefits, anything that is related to your funding with our program. So I'm going to, again, drop my email in the chat as well, but I just want to talk a little bit about vet tech and the status and all that good stuff. So If anyone's familiar with the Vet Tech program, it's a pilot program initiated by the VA for students who are interested, or veterans and skilled students who are active duty, but looking to transition out into the tech field. And is the ending of it is officially April 1st, 2024. However, recently there was an email that went out from the VA saying that funds were nearing exhaustion. So I know some people had some concerns as to whether there would be funding for this particular cohort for Whiskey Platoon. If you have a current approval letter from the VA for Vet Tech, also known as a certificate of eligibility, I will take that and save it on file. We are optimistic that there will be Vet Tech funding for Whiskey Platoon. So, but if anything changes, we do have scholarships available, and I will also give you that information as you move forward with the program. We also accept GI Bill for in-person students and the VRNE program. If, like I said, Vet Tech is not available for any reason, we provide generous scholarships. And in the past, we have provided generous scholarships to a whole cohort. So please do not worry about whether or not you'll be able to afford the program, if you're going to have monies available. If you have any specific questions about the VA benefits or about Vet Tech, I'll drop my email in the chat, or you can email me specifically, as well as ask them now if you have anything that you want to say.
So, hi, everyone. My name is John Atkins. Tish, so my understanding, and Aaron, my understanding was that I'm trying to utilize the Vet Tech. So my understanding was that if you do go through this initial program and pass both of the assessments by January 22nd, that you're guaranteed a spot in the Whiskey Platoon. But if you're trying to utilize the Vet Tech program and they're out of funds, how does that work? Or is that kind of like a individual basis? We could talk about like offline. That's just a general question.
Yes. Well, let me clarify. The funds, as long as they're available, no matter when you get accepted for Whiskey, even if it's at the later date of January 22nd, as long as the funds are available for Vet Tech, we can still process you for Whiskey Platoon. So it's really based on the VA, and if they send out notice saying that they won't take any new enrollments before that date. But if they do, we can still process you for Whiskey for Vet Tech.
Okay, so it's just kind of at the more of the VA's discretion at that point of whether or not I'd be able to join that
Correct.
particular platoon.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you're interested, like I said, we still have scholarships. Some people even applied for VRNE and got approved for the summer cohort that when they exhausted the last time. So there are a couple other options. We like to go over it with you if you really would like to start for Whiskey, but we would love to have you join us.
Okay. I'll probably talk to you more offline, but thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate that, Tish.
Tish, or someone just the same time I started talking, Jordan asked a question in the text, so I don't know who should go first.
Oh no, you can go and then I'll address Jordan.
Oh, but I have actually an answer to Jordan's question. So
Okay.
I actually talked he was asking about how many months does he use up, and it's different than a degree program. And of course, I'm sure you would have the same answer that that I received from the VA, is that it uses about 1 month is equivalent to about $2,500. So like if the co-platoon is $19,000, you would need about 8 months, I think.
That's yes. Between 8 to 9, yes, that's correct.
And so but like I because I was looking into this as well, because because Vet Tech has possibility of running out of funding. And I have 6 months and 26 days remaining, and the VA said, and it actually says on your certificate of eligibility from the VA, it says, if you're in the middle of the program, if you're over 50% through the program, if you have like X number of clock hours remaining, that they won't kick you to the curb. They won't like pull the plug in the middle of the program. They'll allow you to finish. So you basically said your entitlement is extended if you're in the last part of the program. So that was good news for me. And it might be for other people too, who have less, who or might consider using GI Bill as an alternative to the Vet Tech and can be in Chicago in person and have enough months of entitlement remaining. But the question I had about Vet Tech was, so I've talked to some other programs, and they said that they did get an email from the VA that said, stop taking new enrollments. So are
Mhm.
you saying that you got a different message from the VA that they didn't say stop taking new
They
enrollments?
no, what happened, they sent it was running low and they said pause temporarily.
Mhm.
So they're not completely out, but what they said in our email was that they wanted to calculate to see how much funding they had remaining. When they send out an email saying it's totally out, they'll let everyone know.
I see. Okay. So when will you know, you think? Because like it's a matter of like if I whether I move to Chicago for temporarily or not. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
if Vet Tech is available, I'll stay where I'm at. If
Mm-hmm.
Vet Tech is not available and I have to use the GI Bill, then I'll move. So I guess it would be nice to know sooner.
Our our marker has been for this particular cohort 30 days. But like I said, we can talk offline and more about it and try to figure out you know, what's the best move for you. But I'm
Okay.
glad you mentioned GI Bill. I wanted to say something about that too. With regards, we had a few students that pivoted and used their GI Bill for uniform. What we did, they used, you know, whatever they had remaining, and then we scholarship the rest. So you can do that as well. Like if you only have, like some people had only, you know, a few months left, or you know, like 6 months or something, we were able you know, to scholarship the rest for them as well. Yeah.
And then
So
Greg just put it in the chat if you're eligible for VRD. I went
Mhm.
through VRD and I'm not eligible again. So I mean,
Okay.
yes, that's a good, you know, I did look into that, and I unfortunately dealt with a very, very strict counselor who said, no, we can't do it again. Sorry.
And that's the unfortunate thing. It's a really good program, but it is counselor based, and their you know, approval or or lack thereof, you know. So but if you're able to get it, that is an option as well. Thank you,
so
Casey. Mhm.
I did not realize that it would be using that much of my GI Bill. That 8 months worth. I was wondering if we don't want to use 8 months worth, are we able to still use some scholarship to sort of like balance it out at all, or is
Yes.
that not possible? And is that something that we should like talk with you offline about? Because I can't use vet tech again, so I was just willing to use my GI Bill, but I did not want to use 8 months worth of my GI Bill.
You
Um,
can. You can. It is an individual situation, but we can work that out. We
okay,
can decide how much you want to
okay,
use and apply towards your tuition.
okay. And is that should we just reach out to you?
Please, yes, just email
Okay,
me. Mm-hmm.
I will. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or concerns for Tish or Greg? Okay. I think we have all the questions answered. Again, I've seen quite a few people enter into the room since we started. So again, I'm recording this, so you always have ability to go. I'll post this recording on YouTube and on the Whiskey Platoon YouTube, and you'll be able to take a look at this recording if you missed anything. So that's always an option. But thanks again, Tish and Greg. I think they're excited to get into the material then. So I think we will move into that.
I had, sorry, one more question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
For the class purposes, what sort of material are we going to need for the class? Like what sort of computer, or is that something that we'll be getting into later on?
So I was going to go over what's needed, but really all you need is a device to access the internet, to see the material, to participate in the Zoom. As long as you can access Zoom and listen to material, and then you can anything internet enabled. You don't need any to set up a computer for coding or any of that stuff. That's for Whiskey Platoon. We have a whole process for that. So yeah, for the class itself, I was going to go over kind of the materials we have and all that before we get into the lesson itself. So okay, well, let's move into. I'm going to share my screen.
Thanks
and
all.
Yep. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Tish. see if I have the right screen here. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Yep. Okay, good. And it's the one with the GitHub, correct? Okay, perfect. Now I have the green border that I normally saw before. Haven't used Zoom in quite a bit. So, so this is the GitHub repo that I shared in the chat. Everybody can access it. If you have an internet-enabled device, you can access it, and you can see the lessons that we have. And it's broken down to 4 weeks. So again, Quick Pass is going to be over 4 weeks. It's going to start today and end in late January. And we will, all the lessons we'll cover is going to help you get through that initial assessment. So there are 2 assessments we have to accomplish to qualify for Whiskey Platoon, and that is the coding assessment that you already should have access to. It's the application assessment, and the second one is going to be a live coding assessment. So that's where, if you're not so good with the skills that you're taking a look at the assessment that you have now, and you're like, man, this is really tough. We're going to teach you those skills and give you those tools to get through those assessments, and you should have enough confidence then to go through the live coding assessment. I believe you get two opportunities to go through that. So when the scheduling opens up at the beginning of the month, and you feel ready, you can take the live coding assessment in early January if you want. Once you pass that and pass the other application assessment, you'll get a letter saying you're approved to go into Whiskey Platoon. But getting into the GitHub, we have our Quick Pass program here, and it's broken down into 4 weeks. And so you can just click.
Hey, Aaron, sorry
Yeah.
to start. Did you say you put something in the chat, like a link or something in the chat?
So in Slack, does everybody have access to the Slack channel? Or does anybody not know what Slack is? Okay, so Diego says this is acting up. And we can assist with some of those Slack issues. If you're having issues and you can't get hold of me in the actual session, you can email me. Okay, yeah. So we'll help you out offline to get you access into Slack. It's going to be a primary communication platform for the platoon, and I encourage you to contribute if you can. If you know an answer to somebody's question, don't wait for me to answer it. Don't wait for another instructor or TA to answer it. If you know the answer, we can share it. We can share the answers. That's that's the good part about collaboration, being in a classroom setting. So back to GitHub.
I'm sorry. Can I just so someone was asking about the pinned link. So I'm in the Quick Pass Whiskey Slack channel right now, and it mentions that he pinned some links. I just don't see the pinned links.
So you're in the chat itself?
I am in the Quick Pass Whiskey Slack channel.
Okay, at the very top below the channel name, there should be some links to our Zoom and to the calendar.
Those are the pins. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So those right there. So the GitHub link there will take you right to that page I initially showed, and you'll be able to see that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And so, those lessons are broken down. So we have 3 lessons per week. And we'll have those right here. So you can already see them and look at them all you want. And before each lesson, at the bottom, we're going to have some exercises for you to do on your own. We're not going to grade them. They're really just for you. And they're going to be links to a Replit that will have some code, and you'll type it in. And I'll show you at the end of today's lesson how to go in there and tinker with that. But it's just a way to kind of type some code, get used to typing it in and then running it. You don't have to know anything about terminals or running, VS Code and doing all that stuff. It really is just a nice, easy way to get yourself into code if you've never worked with it before. And so I know we have some folks here who already had GitHub handles, so they kind of understand what coding is. And we're going to rely on you guys to really to help out with some of the questions. So we'll I'll give you some pointers as well, and give you some tools if you're really curious about how to set up your computer if you want. We do have a question here from Salvador. How does live coding work? Will it be through Zoom with someone watching or timed assessment? Yes. So it'll be with one of our instructors. So you're going to make an appointment, kind of, they're going to sit down with you and give you a coding challenge, not unlike what you've seen already in your application. If you've opened that up and taken a look at it, and they're going to ask you to kind of type it out, figure it out right in front of them. And that serves two purposes. One, that's part of the job. Sometimes you got to code in front of people, but two, it also allows us to kind of see, what level you're at to understand the material and to apply it without being on your own or relying on Google. So, okay, looks like we have some other folks needing help entering the Slack channel, and we'll help you as we go through. But I don't want to delay getting into the material because this stuff is we have quite a bit, and I want to give you guys plenty of examples so you can take this and then apply it to the exercises. So you can follow along using GitHub. I'm actually going to switch over to my VS Code window. It looks the exact same. It just has a different flavor, but it's going to be the same exact file, and it's going to show you the same material that we have in GitHub. But you can follow along here. In fact, let me show you one more thing. I'm going to show you the REPL, since we did get done with that a little early. All right. This is Replit. This is the site that you'll link to at the bottom of the GitHub. We'll have the exercises. You're going to see me primarily in this course right here in the window. I have just a file that I created that I can code into. That way I can show you guys what the examples that I have for you in the lesson. So I'm gonna go through this, type some stuff out there, and then I'll execute it, kind of show you how the results work. Let me move this a little bit. Can everybody see that? Is it clear to everybody? Great. Let me already have a little bit. Put that there. Okay. Great. So the layout of the course, we're going to go over really the fundamentals, the very fundamentals of coding. And this is stuff you don't want to gloss over. The foundational stuff is super important because it's the stuff that you're going to be thinking about without even thinking about it. You're going to be thinking about it a lot initially. So when we go through this, this course, and I'm going to throw stuff at you like, string methods and, lists and tuples, dictionaries. These are things that that we think about as developers without thinking about them. So it's just like when you learn how to walk, when you were a baby and you learned how to walk, you had to concentrate putting one foot in front of the other. But after a while, you just kind of did. You just did it on your own. And you learned how to run. You learned how to jump side to side. And all of those things that you just become muscle memory, you're going to have to do with coding as well. And so this stuff is all of that muscle memory material. And it goes into the basic data types. It goes into how we change data types from one type to another, and then the methods with those data types, and then into functions and how do we structure code to do things? How do we structure the whole program into pieces? And so we're gonna take those very basic pieces and learn how to assemble them into something. And that is really, it can be sometimes a bit dry, and it's, can be repetitive when you're going over these exercises. But it's really, really important to focus on it and get through this portion. So when you get to the more complicated stuff, you have that good foundation, because building that foundation is so important. And then, so we're going to go over a lot of those initial things in this course. When you see like Python variables and conditionals, truthy, falsy, and just strings, lists, and tuples, we're going to have whole sections, whole days based on these types of information. And then we'll put together, once we get into the later lessons, we'll start moving into more complicated things like two-dimensional lists. And then one of my favorite lessons that I usually teach first is the computational piece, the computational thinking, the algorithmic thinking, how to take a look at a problem and break it down into those steps logically, how to think like a computer. And once you wrap your mind around those types of that type of thinking, it becomes easier to put something together. So so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this first lesson. And so what we're going to talk about is Python variables and the data types. And so really, we're going to do kind of like a 10,000 foot view of the information that the basic data types we have in Python. And then we're going to look at some examples, look at some of the methods we have for those to kind of see how it's used in Python. So let's just start with looking at the REPL itself and executing Python code, and with variables. So in all the languages, you have data types. I can write the number 100 here, and Python already knows that it's going to be a number. I could also enclose some characters in some quotes and make a string, and Python knows it's data type. But you can't reuse that unless you assign it to a variable, unless you give it a name and assign it in memory to something. So you'll see that a lot of times we're always assigning variables and then reusing that name in something. So in this case here, in our example in the README here, we have age equals 25, or you can say my variable equals Aaron. And then I can run a function called print, which will allow it to see it in the console. If I run that there, Python knows to grab my variable, which is now assigned to Aaron, and return it and print it. And this is, this print is an actual included function in Python, which will take it and then do something behind the scenes with the code to get it out to the console. So in Python, we don't have to declare the data type explicitly. There are other languages. If anybody here is familiar with other languages, we have some languages where you have to kind of identify the type. So, integer or string, and you have to say, hey, this variable is an integer and it is 25, and it stays that way. And there's some benefits to having that, but with Python, you don't have to do that. So Python, it will automatically grab and, it'll say, hey, this is saved in memory and this is an integer. If you notice, I have this equal sign here. This is the assignment operator. And it is used to assign variables. So it is not used like in math to establish equality or to check equality. That is used specifically for assignment. We use the double equal sign to check for equality. And you'll see how we use that later when we're doing some comparison and getting some truthy falsy type statements. So if you don't know, let's say, for example, my variable was assigned way earlier in the code or in another file, and you have no idea what type of variable it is. Well, there is a method in Python to check the type of a variable, and when you run it, it'll give you back. Let me print it real quick. Let me run that real quick. It'll tell you the type of variable it is. So in this case, of course, my variable is a string, and so it comes back as a string. If I have an integer there and I run it, it comes back as an integer. So you can check the type of your variable that you assign. And so in the example, I have a good example of that as well. Any questions on the variable piece? And if you do have questions during lecture, I will stop periodically to ask if there are questions. So if you want to save them until when I do that, I will stop several times through the lecture to ask your questions, or if you need clarification on anything.
I have a question.
Sure.
For the assessment, will we be using Python or will we be using JavaScript?
So we'll be using Python, and I'm only going to be teaching Python in this. So if you're not as comfortable with Python, hopefully this course will make you as comfortable with Python. But if you've already been kind of studying JavaScript, a lot of those skills translate. So, JavaScript itself is also not strictly typed, so you can just kind of assign variables. So similarities there. There are quite a bit of methods that are different, but in Code Platoon, you learn Python and JavaScript both anyway. So you have a leg up if you've been studying JavaScript for a while and now you're learning Python. This course is focused on Python since it's really just a basic computing, so that's common to all the languages.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yeah, quick question, Aaron. So once the variable is set, we cannot change the variable then, correct? Once that variable is set to, let's say, in the example, 25 or Alice or Aaron.
Okay, so I have my variable like 24 here,
Mm-hmm.
and I print it, right? And then, oops, variable. All right, so what do you think is going to happen here?
Say Aaron.
I'm gonna say Aaron.
It's just going to say Aaron?
Yeah.
Hi.
It'll do both. So if you think about it, yeah, it'll do both. So scripts run down, from the top to the bottom. So in this case, I assigned it 24, and then I ran the print function so it prints, and then I reassigned it to the string Aaron, and then I was able to print it again.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you can reassign variables. It's totally allowed. In fact, you're probably going to do that sometime in your coding adventure. It happens quite a bit. Sometimes you'll have functions that will change variable types for you. So you'll write those as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you explain one more time why my variable works in place of just var?
So var, like that?
Yeah.
And then if you run that, you get so there are some times where you need to watch some of the words that you use. In this case, is var a keyword in Python? It's a good question. I know, for example, you don't want to do this. So you don't want to say, you don't want to do that. Because print is a included function, and if you overwrite that, you'll have to restart your Python kernel. Just restart. Like I would have to restart this replit if I ran this, because I would lose that inherent functionality. Python has some reserved words that you can't reassign, but then it also has included functions that you can reassign if you're not careful. So it's always good to go ahead and put the word my or something in front of it with underscore. That way you don't, if you don't overwrite those. So but var worked.
I'm so sorry. I guess my question is, how does Python or whatever's printing out know that my var is supposed to function like a variable as opposed to functioning as something else, like I don't know, like the Boolean values when you have a let's, or not when you have let's, is it because it has the word var in it, it knows to function as a variable?
Well, I think you're still kind of introduced some JavaScript into Python, because you're saying let and you're saying var, and those are some keywords to define variables in JavaScript.
Oh,
so,
okay, my bad, sorry.
Yeah,
I was going
no,
off
it's
of
fine.
the
Yeah,
quick
I
pass
mean,
instructions.
I always JavaScript, and I should be Pythoning, and the other way around. I do it still, especially when I'm doing full stack. I'm kind of doing both sides. But yeah, so with Python, you don't have to say let or var. You just type in a variable name, and then you run the assignment operator to what you want to put in there. So yeah, you don't have to declare it or anything. And then it looks like I have a question about how do you make it print? Again, that's with the print function. So print is really used to print a variable or just to see something output. When you're coding, and this is later on down the road, when you're coding, you're going to throw print statements in your code every now and then to see kind of the status of what it's doing. Because you're going to write programs that are manipulating numbers and doing calculations and giving you a result back based on what you want it to do, when you want to see how it's changing data types and stuff. So you'll print by running that print function again. So if we remember my variable, and you run print function here. So, and that's how you're going to run that. And that's how you make it print. So let's move on to some naming conventions here. So variable names can consist of letters, numbers, and underscores. They must start with letter underscore, but it cannot start with a number. So in this case, if you're more comfortable with JavaScript, you're going to have a bit of a hard time, because this underscore, using underscore in this is very Pythonic. You're typically going to write your variables just like this if you want to have several words in it. That's called snake case. And so it's all lowercase letters with an underscore in between them. Augie is saying, I don't see the quick pass link in the Slack channel. I'm in the intro to coding
stuff,
section.
you're good.
What's that?
I'm covering all the Slack stuff, you're good.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Nick. So again, this is snake case. And so with that, that's exactly, you can still write the other way. I mean, I can still assign a variable like we do in JavaScript, which would be this camel case. There would be nothing wrong with doing that. But it's typically not Pythonic. It's not in the style guide to do so. So you want to use the underscore in between. This is more like JavaScript here. Again, we're not going to cover any JavaScript in this course, so I'm going to get this out of here. But again, you want to use that snake case. And of course, descriptive names are always better. And it's a skill that's kind of really learned as you get more exposure to code. A lot of times people want to say, well, A equals, 15, and then, B equals cat. And then as you write your code later on down the road, you're like, what does B equal again? So you want to make sure that you use descriptive variable names, because they are, Python's meant to be human readable as well. So when you're reading code, you want to be able to kind of follow the path of a variable as it goes through the code, so you understand what it's doing, kind of can visualize how it's changing form and how it's going through the code, so you can get to the end result. Because if you start throwing those A equals whatever, B equals whatever, it gets really hard to follow. And it's the worst whenever you inherit code like that, you have to kind of follow it. So keep that in mind. So again, descriptive names, this is kind of like the big one here. Use those descriptive names when you're writing variables. Just get used to doing that, and it'll become easier writing code. So any questions on like naming conventions or how to assign a variable? Okay. We'll move into some data types. This is going to be kind of the meat of the lecture today. So I'm going to be just starting to throw some types of stuff in here to kind of show you these examples. This README is really good. It kind of gives you examples straight up, but I am going to show you kind of like what happens when you use some of these methods and how you use them. I'm also, because as a good developer should, I am going to have a Google window open, because I can't always remember what these things are going to do. Even though I'm teaching it, like, I don't have to remember exactly what these things do. And so, having a reference open is totally allowed whenever you're doing code, whenever you're, we just can't remember it all the time. So just having that memory jogger when you're trying to, okay, how can I do that again? How can I get the remainder of something? You can Google that and find like, oh, okay, I can use the floor division, or I can use a modulo to come up with the right answer for that. And so I'm going to have a Google window open. I'll be Googling things sometimes when I'm going through this, showing you exactly what we're supposed to do. But I know most of these, so I'll be able to kind of highlight these for you. And so let's start with integers. So integers are whole numbers. They are numbers without a decimal point. That's the most basic definition of it. They can be either positive or negative. And they will have certain behaviors when you start doing mathematical operations with other integers. And I'll explain some of those as well. But in your example here, I mean, it's pretty clear cut. You can define a variable. And so again, we're using that assignment operator, this age equals, or is assigned to the integer 25. That is an integer. There's no decimal point. All of these are integers here. So we have an integer of 3 and -3, and we have 0. When you start throwing the quotes in here, though, then that's not an integer. And typically in some of your development environments, you're going to see it kind of pop up a different color. In mine, for example, if I were to type in a Python file, I think they show up as purple. And you can change the development environment as needed, but that will help you kind of see it. But if you don't have any of that, and you're just typing in a text editor, for example, then the number has to have no decimal point, and it'll be integer otherwise. But you can do basic math in here. So we can say, well, 3 plus 3. And I don't know if REPL, it will allow me to just run that. I know Jupyter Notebook will, but I can just do that, I believe. Yeah, so here I have integer. I have 3 plus 3. I can do the addition just simply that. I can just print my integer. So I can tell Python to print the number 3. Python also incorporates the order of operations. So parentheses, if we remember PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, the multiplication, division, they're kind of together, and then addition and subtraction to kind of break down those ties, because multiplication, division are kind of at the same level. Python always works from left to right in your expression. So if you have a multiplication further to the left and division operation, it's going to do the multiplication first. One of the things, though, when you're running with Python, with addition and subtraction, you will get integers if you're doing the operation on integers. So if I say 3 minus 2, and I run that, I'm going to get a 1 back, and it's going to be an integer. If I do a multiplication or division problem, however, and I run that, I think it's division, actually. Multiplication is going to end up with an integer. Let's do 6 divided by 2. Run that. Python's going to give you a different number type when you do a division operation, and it's going to be a float, which is kind of like an integer, just a little different. I'll get into that here in a bit. So we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and then you have division over here. And then you have like this double star. And so that's going to be an exponent. So I can take this, run that. And it's going to give me an exponent. So 6, of course, to the power of 2 is going to be 36, or 6 times 6. And then conversely, or not conversely, we have 2 other operations here. So this isn't going to be the same thing as kind of the opposite or square root. It's going to be a different operation. But here, this one is going to be what's called floor division. And so what that means is if I were to do, let's do 7, 2, let's do 7, let's do 7, run that. What this does is it takes this number and it just sees how many times you can divide this number evenly by this number, and it's going to ignore the remainder. So in this case, 2 can go into 7 3 times. You're going to have a remainder of 1, but it's not going to let you know that. So when you're doing floor division, you're just getting the integer that's closest to getting how many times you can get that divided into. That's a good question. Why does Python result in a floating point decimal when it's an even, or when like if it gets divided evenly and has no remainder? That's just the behavior of Python. I don't know why, but I think it's just to make sure you have a standard data type on any division operation. So yeah, it's definitely it's a quirk of the language, but it's there for a reason. It's mainly so any division operation is going to end up in the result. It's going to result to the same data type no matter what you do, because when you're writing programs, you're trying to have to think about like, okay, will this number work? Will this number work? Will this number work? Like you don't want to have to think about that. So this kind of is a way to it's a way to make sure that you have the same type of data off of an operation. So in this case, when you divide, you're always going to get a floating point number. So 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, and then 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3, but it will be 3.0. Okay, you can also throw those negative numbers in there, and it will do the appropriate math. So 6 divided by -2 will be -3. And then the last one we have here is a modulo. And so it's the percent sign that you're used to. Let me go back to 7 here. So 7 modulo 2 will give you just the remainder. So here we run this, and we're going to get a 1 back. And so there we go. We have a 1. We know that 2 can go into 7, not evenly. It can't go into it evenly. There will be a remainder. And so this type of operation really help you figure out what numbers go into others evenly, and maybe figure out like stuff like, well, is my variable that I don't know what it is it even or odd number, for example? Like if I know that 2 can, if I divide my unknown number by 2 and it returns a 1, well, then I know at least my unknown number is not even, because it can't be divided by 2 evenly. So as far as Python ever busting out fractions, I don't know, typically it's going to be floating point. I'm sure there's a library out there that can convert any kind of floating point number into a fraction, but I don't know what it is. So that should be all the operators. Then we have some other methods here too. So for example, we have, let's say we have 6 divided by -2. We know that's going to end up with -3, but what if we want the absolute value? So we have -3 there. We can throw this method in here. So print absolute value. Oops, not too many. I'm going to close my parentheses. I run that, it's going to give me a 3 versus a -3. And then div mod, I've never actually used that one before. So I am going to, let's see what this one says. I've looked it up before. Okay, so the div mod here, it's kind of like combining both your division operation and your modulo, and giving you a tuple back with the actual divisor and the remainder left. So it kind of gives you a result. So that's good right there. And if you were curious of what I just Googled, I literally Googled div mod Python. That is going to be one of your strongest search terms for most methods. If you want to get more information on it, you're going to see a lot of like Python documentations, W3 schools. You'll see Geeks for Geeks. Those are all fine to click on to get a quick answer on any kind of method or something that's unknown in Python. And you can also type questions as well.
Hey, Aaron, like for things like that, for like beginners, are those good things for us to like kind of look up on the side and try to practice on our own, or is it kind of good to just kind of follow what you're going on, what you're showing for the most part? Because I feel like that can take you down a rabbit hole.
Oh no, like I'll stick to the lesson, of course, but if you want to look at this stuff on the side, feel free. You're going to find out when you get into a problem, you're like, I really don't know how to do this. Like, is it, you may have run into an issue with that, and you can just start Googling, those methods that you're learning about. The stuff we're going to cover in the exercise is going to cover it's going to be covered by what was in the lesson. So you'll be able to find the answers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I kind of explained floating point numbers already. Again, they're numbers with decimal point. They can be positive, they can be negative. Again, not a float, of course, is wrapped in the quotes here. This is also not a float because it doesn't have a decimal point. So that presence of a decimal point really tells you if a number is a float or not. Those same basic operations work with floats and integers, and it also works between floats and integers. And I know someone asked a question about that. Can we do operations between floats and integers? And the answer is yes. And the result, actually, you will get back the most restrictive type of data, which in this case, the most restrictive type of data will be a float, which is not really most restrictive, I guess the most descriptive. So if I were to run, 6 times -2, remember we can get an integer with a multiplication operation. But if I run that here, I'm going to get a float. let me get rid of this absolute value thing. We don't need that. We don't need that anymore. In fact, let's just go ahead and do an addition operation. So 6 plus -2 will get a 4 back as a float because you have a float in there. So Python's smart enough to do the operations between those different data types. With a float, we do have some built-in methods, and some of these here, if you notice, you're going to see them multiple times. Oh, what's this third other method? That's the same as doing the exponent. So it's just running a power function. So, and I can just pull it up for you so you can see how it works. And so here we have the POW function. So we have an example. We take this POW, we give it two numbers, and we want to say, hey, 4 to the power of 3. And so we just do, POW and then 4, 3. And so it's the same exact thing as writing out with the double star, the exponent symbol. Back in the floats, in this case here, if you want to get an integer result, so you see how we're adding a float and a integer together. We can say, well, I want this to be an integer result, and I want to run that. There we go. So what I did was I casted it to an integer. Python let me do that because I had a 4.0. If my result was going to be a 4.1, it was going to scream at me and tell me, yeah, I can't do that because the number is a float and it can't be an integer. So in this case, I want to do int 4.2. If I try and run that, and it worked. It casted it to an integer. Let me move this up. Hold on. I was wrong. So it can cast it. It'll just truncate it to the nearest value, or to the lowest value, I believe. So let's do 4.8 and run that and make cast to a 5. Let's see. Nope, it'll just truncate it. So it just takes off the 0.8 and gives you your the value of the integer. As far as rounding, so we can round. If we print that, it'll round to the nearest integer. In this case, it's going to round to 5. If I have 4.4, run that, we will see it rounded to a 4. And then you can also cast things to a string. This is actually pretty important when it comes to later development. Sometimes you're going to get data as a string or as an integer. You need to cast it to another form. So I can easily cast that to a string. Why didn't I do that? I bet this is still a string. Let me assign this to a variable so we can see it. Try it that way. There we go. So we indeed see that it was cast into a string. So I defined it as a variable, and then I ran the method to cast it to a string. And then I was printing the type to see what it was, because I really couldn't see what it was in this console when it was a 4.4 like this, didn't have the quotes around it. So I needed to run the type function to see what type it was. And indeed, it came back as a string. Any questions on floats or integers? Okay, let's move to strings. So for strings, strings are sequences of characters enclosed in single or double quotes or triple quotes if you have multiple lines, and we'll go over that later on. But in this case, we have some examples here, and I've already shown you good examples of like my name, for example. But in this case, let's go ahead and copy this one and put it in. Okay, let's not use Windows commands and back to Mac. So for my primary job, so I am a developer by trade. I work for a defense contractor, like I mentioned, but they forced a Windows computer onto me. Wouldn't let me have a Mac. My previous company did let me have a Mac, and I really get mixed up when I'm switching back to my Mac and having to use Command C and V versus Control. I use it all the time. Okay, and type string. Oh, nope, I did not want that. There we go. Let's not do capital either. Okay, I can run that, and I assigned a string to the variable string, and then I printed the type of the string, and it ended up being a string. We do have these other types here. So if you notice, there's two strings here. One has double quotes around it, and then one has single quotes around it. They both are the same thing. So, and it is actually needed to have two types of string because let's see. So if I did single quotes, so again, this is a string as well. Okay, so that's a string as well. But let's see here. I can. So one of the reasons why we have two different types of quotes you can put around a string is to kind of support messages with like contractions in it. If, for example, here, in this case, when I run this, Python sees this as the string and then this as a bunch of nonsense afterwards. And so if I were to try and run this, I think I'll get an end of, like an end of line, undeterminate string, literal. So I'm getting a syntax error. So here, this is like, if you've messed with Python before, you've seen errors. This is one of the errors that are actually pretty helpful if you read them, but they can be scary if you're trying to run something and not get errors. This is saying, hey, I have a unterminated string literal, which means your strings are jacked up and you need to kind of take a look at them and see what's wrong with them. In this case, I want to put this contraction in here, but I need to change my enclosing quotes to be able to hold it correctly. So now if I ran this, it's not going to return anything, but this here will work because I'm using two different types of quotes. This last one here, again, I'll explain this later on so I can get through this initial overview, but it's a rare type of string used for multi-lines, and we have F strings. And then, of course, this example here is not a string because it's not wrapped at all by any kind of quotes. So if you look here, we do have kind of like this, my IDE is kind of flagging it and doing different colors with it. Some of these keywords like not, for example, is going to be shown as a different color. And that's also a good clue if you're familiar with IDEs or development environments to kind of see some sort of mistake. So we also have methods on strings to do string manipulation or even searching and slicing. And this is kind of one of the more powerful tools in Python to really have in your back pocket, understand these methods, kind of almost memorize them, because you will be using them a lot. So I can kind of show you an example of what some of these things do. So I'm going to go ahead and do a print statement here, and I'm going to say string, let's do string.upper. Okay. And if I run this, now I get my string in all capital letters. So it's going to go through behind the scenes. Python is using this. This is a function, or it's called a method. And this is behind the scenes doing some stuff. So inside the code base where you can't see, it's taking this string and then it's running through a loop, and it's looking each one and checking to make sure that it's a capital letter versus a lowercase letter. And then it's saying, hey, if this letter is not, if it's not uppercase, make it uppercase. And it's going through, and then it's saying, hey, well, this is not a letter, move on. It's not gonna change it. So anything that's not a letter, it's not gonna go over. And that's exactly what this is doing behind the scenes. Same with lower. So you have upper and lower. And so if I ran this here, it's gonna make it all lowercase. And so, I only had one letter, and that is the T, and now it's a lowercase t. I'm going to print string. This last one here, we have strip. This is going to strip all white space on either side of your string to clean it up. So it's a pretty good processing tool. If you have some data coming in that you need to kind of organize and clean up, it's a good way to get rid of some white space on either side. So in this output, let me print, actually, let me strip. I forgot to put strip in there, didn't I? Okay, let's try it now. If I run that, if you notice, there's white space on either side of this one, and I stripped it initially, and then it doesn't change the string. It just gives you an in-place, an in-place visualization of it, if you will. And then I have my original string below that. We can also search through strings, so we can find like specific words, or find the location of specific words using the find. We can also split strings. So if I were to, yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, big dog. When you put like lower and upper and strip, is that, do you have to put those extra parentheses after it?
Yes. So in this case here, right, this open and close parentheses kind of tells Python that, hey, this term here is a method. So we're going to get into functions, and you're going to see that, because functions really equate to methods. You're going to see that later on, and we're going to show you like the syntax for that. But really, just know that this is kind of a special way to do things, and this is called a method, and this is a string method, if you will. So it's a string method to manipulate strings. Okay. Again, a lot of stuff's really, this is kind of a 10,000 foot view. You're not going to get it right away. These exercises will help you, and I'll be here to also explain things in depth once I get through this lecture, because I'm here until 9 p.m. And then, of course, we're open in Slack to answer any questions as well. Okay. Okay. We have our split method as well, which will take it'll take the string and split it on a delimiter that you choose. So in this case, I'm going to say, okay, well, I want to take my string, I want to split it on the spaces. So if I run that, I guess I can get rid of that. Okay, this is the result of the split operation. I'm going to run it again so you can see it without the other stuff in there. Okay, so what this is, it took the string and it split everything on the white space. So in this case, it took this portion here, there's a white space, so it then made another entry here. And this is called a list. And I'm going to go over that here in just a second, what it's doing. So this split method will turn a string into a list. Okay, and lastly, we have replace. Again, this isn't really to give you an in-depth yet on what these are doing. I'm just trying to show like some methods quickly so we can see, because it's going to be a 10,000 foot view of some of these methods and some of these data types. We're going to really dive into strings, lists and tuples, dictionaries and sets in week 2. So we're going to get all this stuff again, so you guys have some exposure to it. So here, let's do the letter E. Let's change that to E. Okay, so in this case, I took the string and I said, hey, I want to replace all instances of the lowercase e and turn it into an uppercase E. If you notice, I use 2 different types of strings here. It doesn't really matter. I can do double quotes, single quotes for all of them. But that's what this method does. It just replaces the individual characters from what you want to replace to what you want to replace it with. So that's the replace method. And one thing I did want to mention, again, strings are sequences of characters. And what that means is really it's a collection of characters. And you can do things with strings, and I'll explain it later, like find individual indexes, if you will, or numbered location of a string. And we'll go into that when we get into the strings lesson next week. So any questions on strings, at least in the sense, just a 10,000 foot view of what?
Just a quick question, Aaron. Like, is there a simple way of explaining the difference between like the quotes with just having 1 versus 2 versus 3?
Again, really the single and double are interchangeable. Yeah. It's just if you have some text in there that you need to use like a single quote, you know, for like a contraction or something, you want to make sure you wrap in a double quote so Python does not get confused. Same thing if you're, let's say you have a string of text and it's a quote of somebody, like, so like this person said, and then they have quotes around it, you want to make sure you're enclosing a single quote so it doesn't interact and close your string prematurely. And you'll see an error like that syntax error that you saw. You'll see that in Python if you run into that. So, and then the triple quote is for multi-line strings, which I can show you later when we get into strings, but it's mainly for longer strings that go on multiple lines of code. You can use triple quotes to just everything between these triple quotes is a string, just cast it all to a string. So
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You're not using backlinks like they use it in JavaScript, right? From what I've seen, you're just using single quotes, double quotes, but no backlinks.
You talking about the backticks?
Yeah, that's it. Backticks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, those are escape characters. They are used in Python, but really they're out of the scope of this course. But yeah, it's just mainly, so you can use escape characters to do certain functions like create a new line or a tab. So that's just simply it's just a backtick with the one character, and it's going to be like an N will like be like a new line, for example. Those are in strings as well. But again, we'll get into some of those. I have to take a look at the lesson again, see if we have it in there, but it is an escape character. We do have those in Python.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Aaron, I see you have information on line 3 and line 5. Is there any reason you're skipping 4? Does that mean anything?
It's just a separation so you guys can see what I'm doing. I can put it up here. Python will allow you to skip lines. You know, if I wanted to have several lines, it won't do anything on these empty lines. It'll just run straight down. So it's just mainly for separation so you can see it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with lists, let's move into lists. So like strings, lists are ordered collections, but they hold kind of bigger data types. So it's not just a character, it's going to be another string or integers or floats or other lists. You have, you know, a list can be an ordered collection of anything. Sometimes that can be, you know, with some languages, you're not allowed to do that. You have to have the same type of data in a list. You can't have varying types. With Python, Python's smart enough to allow you to do that. So let's go back up here, and you're going to see fruit as an example a lot. That's the go-to for most most ways of teaching coding. So lots of fruits and baskets and things going in there. But you can have lists of anything. So let's say you're trying to run like a car dealership site. You're going to have lists of like car makes and other things to reference. But in this case, really, we're just trying to show you how you can take a list and do things with it. So I'm going to copy this one over to my code and Command C, not Control C. There I have my fruits, and it is a nice list. A list is, you know, a list is a list when it's surrounded by brackets. So here we have those open and closed square brackets. That means I have a list. And my list is named fruit. So I assigned my list using this single equal sign here to the variable fruits. And I have 3 of them in there. So I have apple, banana, and cherry. I can print my fruits. And when I print it, I'm going to get my fruits back and my output. So apple, banana, cherry. List will maintain the same order that you put stuff into. So there's no, it doesn't have to be alphabetical order. You can sort them to be in a certain order, but however you assign them is how they're going to be returned. So they're stored in memory in a certain order. So everything in a list will have a certain memory address in your RAM. And then when it goes to access it, it will be in the same order. So they are ordered because when you assign them in a certain order, they're going to stay in that order. There are collections in Python that are unordered. So let's see here. That's a good question. So the question here we have is there reasons the output is a single quote and the input was a double? Really, sometimes it depends on your IDE. So in this case here, we have our apple surrounded by double quotes, but here it's single quotes. But we learned that a string is a string. So a string is a string is a string. It doesn't matter what it's surrounded by. In this case, again, I'm learning stuff about Replit because I really haven't used it much before starting teaching here. But in this case, it displays it with a single quote, but we still know it's a string and it's going to be apple. If you did notice, those strings outside of a list didn't have quotes at all. So in this output, I don't know what this is. So I had to run the string function to kind of, or the type function to see that, oh, that is a string, for example. In this case, inside of a list, it is going to show it with quotes because I need to know what type of data is inside this list. So it's going to return apple as a string. So that's the reason. It's really, it's just the individual development environment. Lists lists are also mutatable, so I can add items to a list in place, and I can take things away from a list in place. And that's what some of these methods are. So if you look at the list built-in methods, these are probably some of the most important methods because when you're working in as a developer, you're going to be working with lists. You'll be working with all types of data types. But in this case, we have our fruits, and let's say I want to add another fruit to my list of fruits. I can say fruits dot append, and when I open my parentheses, that's a signifying that this is going to be a method of some sort. When I do the dot and then the name, in this case, I'm going to add kiwi. When I run that, append will take whatever I put in there and add it to the end. So it'll just put it at the very end of the list. Extend works in a different way, and it's typically used when you're wanting to add items from one list into another list. So you won't use append because append will add the entire thing as one entry into a list. Extend will add the individual parts as entries into a list. And what I mean by that is, let's go ahead and make a list. And I'm going to say kiwi here. And I'm also going to add some grapes. Add some kiwi and grape. And why am I getting an error?
Do you need to use parentheses instead?
No, I'm trying to have a list. Let me do extend here. It could be, it likes extend, it's not like append. That's weird. Okay. Well, that's fine. I normally can do that. So anyway,
without the brackets.
I'll move into extend. And here, when I run this, what I'm going to do is extend will take each portion and then put it one by one at the end of my list. So in this case, I'm going to extend fruit by 2 more items in my list. And now I have apple, banana, cherry, kiwi, and grape, all as one list. So it takes one list and takes the individual items, puts them into the list. Yeah, I don't know why append is screaming at me in here, because it should just append the entire list at the end. Yeah, see, I don't know why it's screaming at me here, but it did run. And so basically here, if you notice the difference between extending, takes each item and adds it individually to the main list. Append will take the entire thing. So in this case, this is a list of kiwi and grape and put it as one entry in this main list. So that's the difference between append and extend.
Isn't that because you have kiwi and grape inside of a list and the brackets? So if you remove the bracket, does it append, like what's the difference between append and extend?
Well, I would have to put it as a list or something. I can't have it as like that. I think it only allows one argument in append. So append, you're really only adding one argument. See, it's going to say, hey, I don't like that. I don't know what the error is, but yeah, it's Basically, it's going to tell you, hey, you can only have one argument. Yeah, so you expected one positional argument, but you gave two in this case. So on, commercially I have, when I have append, I can add an item with dot remove. I can remove an item from a list, and then I'll get back the list without that item. And so that's a way to remove an item from a list as using that remove. Pop will remove I believe, a random item from it, but I'm going to go ahead and look it up again because it changes from IDE to IDE. So Python pop. Okay, here it removes an index value. So in this case, if I don't provide a value, it's going to remove the end. So if I were to run this again and say I want at the index of 0, it should remove apple. Yep. So with lists, you want to make sure, or you're going to find out later on when we talk about lists and tuples, each one of these has an index, just like in a string. Like I mentioned how you have like a string is an ordered collection of characters, and they have almost like an address. You can get to it inside the string. Lists are the same way. So if I wanted to find the first item in this list, so let's say it's a list that I don't know what it is, right? So it's a list of a bunch of numbers, or it's a bunch of web addresses, right? But I want the first one in that list. I can do, well, I want fruits at the index of 0, and I can go ahead and print that. And that's another thing I wanted to cover as well, is the indexing. Anybody familiar with indexing already with coding?
Yes, Python is a 0 indexing language.
What does that mean?
It means that the first value starts in the 0 position instead of the 1 position.
Yep. So, and that's one thing when you get used to coding, is a lot of times things are 0 indexed, which means you always start at 0. So if I want to print the first item in this list, the fruits at the index of 0, and that's what I'm doing with these square brackets, is I'm designating an index. It's going to return apple because that is the first one, and that's where it returned it right here. And then I printed fruits again totally, so you can see where it's at. If I change this to a 1, that's not the first item, that's the second item in the list. So if I ran this again, this time it should print banana and then show me the whole list and show me the fact that I did print the second item in this list. Like I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about it's going to be hard to think about now. When I'm talking about indexing, and this is a collection of stuff, as you get exposure, it becomes easier and easier. This is another language. It's like learning a totally different language. So if you've never spoken Spanish before, you have to learn, well, not Spanish, but maybe like German or Russian. Like even some of the letters are different than our letters in English. And you have to learn that very basic, like, first I have to know what this backwards R is. What is that? Like, I have to remember what that is. When I'm trying to learn Russian, same thing with Python. I have to learn to count differently with Python, and I have to think about, well, this is not my first, that's my second one, because I'm counting starting at 0. And so a lot of stuff right now is really going to be like, I don't understand what he's doing. That's okay, because what I wanted to just show you is just this good view of what you're seeing. And just to give you an introduction, the exercise at the end of this lesson help give you some of that practice. And then a lot of things you can look up online will give you the practice as well when you're doing some of your self-study. Any questions on some of the methods that I showed you with lists?
For insert, can you go over the difference between insert and append and extend? I think we skipped that one.
Yeah, let me pull up one real quick. So here with insert, it's going to accept 2 arguments. And so if you look at this exactly the same method. Look at that. So with fruits, we have our apple, banana, and cherry, right? If we want to insert orange into the list, we need to designate where we want to insert it to, and then put our value. So in this case, I want to keep that same, but instead I'm going to say fruits dot insert. I'll say 2. I'm going to say grape. No, not that. G. There we go. All right, so run that. Okay, so now we have apple, banana, grape, and cherry, and I inserted the word grape at the index of 2. And so that's how you use the insert method. Okay. We can take this, say fruits. I don't know if it saves or not. I can't remember if it does. Okay. So here we have fruits, and I run the clear. That just removes all the elements of the list, and then you get an empty list at the end. So you can use that whenever you have for example, a loop doing something, it's adding stuff to a list, and then you need to clear that list in between runs. You can do that, or you can just reassign it back to an empty list at the beginning of the loop. But that's really kind of a good way to clear a list, clear things out of memory when you're wanting to clear a list. You run that clear method. Any questions on the methods for lists? Good idea. Let's take a break. Let's take a 10-minute break and come back at come back at 7:45.
Hey, Aaron, this is Dan Gray. Hey, I'm a little confused with GitHub. I'm not familiar with it, and I'm hooked up on Slack, and I see what Slack is, but I'm not sure what GitHub is or where I go to get it or.
Okay, so GitHub is it's a way for developers and development teams to hold code in a central location. It's called a repository, and it really works hand in hand with what's called Git, and Git is a program you'd put on your computer if you want to use it, and it's a version control system. And so Git it's just a fancy way of saving things without actually having to like explicitly save them on your local machine, and it gives like a hash to a certain version of code, which will allow teams to go back into certain versions, and if there's some mistake that happens and they need to revert their code, Git is a way to kind of save code. GitHub is just an online repository. And there's competitors to it. There's Bitbucket and there's GitLab. They all serve the same purpose, and to basically save code where teams of developers can work on the code, edit the code, make their own local branches to make changes and merge the code back in, and it keeps everything nice and orderly. So that there's no conflicts if like multiple people are working on the same file. So in this case here, we have, our Code Platoon full stack quick pass, right? If I were to go back here and take a look, I actually did a pull request on some of the information in these lectures a while ago. And I took this code, I branched it off, and I did some work on it, and then I put a pull request in to then merge it, and then GitHub will like evaluate the code and make sure there's no conflicts, where it can't seamlessly merge everything together, and then it will allow you to do that. And so it's really just a way to hold code. And then we made this public so anybody can see this, and then they can pull it down, or they can just view it right here in their browser. For this course, you really don't have to download anything. You can just look at this in the browser. You can work on the code. Like in our first example, you go down here to our exercises. You can actually click this link, and it will take you right where you need to go.
Will take you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm sorry, your reception is coming in. It's kind of garbling your audio.
So do I?
I'm still getting garbled.
Aaron, just so we're clear, the technical assessment is going to be in Python, not Java, or is it comprised of both?
It will be Python.
Okay.
It will be Python.
Okay.
So let's see here. Yeah, github.com is the main front facing site, but we have a link in the Slack channel. So if you were to look at the top of the Slack channel, we have the link to the Quick Pass GitHub right there. And so that actually links to github.com, Code Platoon, Quick Pass, it links to that site. You don't have to have a login for GitHub if you don't want to, create an account and have, if you're not ready to do that yet, that's fine. You can totally just go to it to view it and, click the links, see the information. That way you have a good reference. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay there. So you'll be able to, follow along. So follow along a Replit, but I don't have access to the Quick Pass Slack channel, it appears. Okay. Let me do this. You do not need a code. You should be able to just click it and get it because it's a public repo. So anybody with the link can get to it. Let me just go ahead and share that again. For the technical assessment that you have, so this is the same thing as the application assessment that you should already have, or if you've applied to Code Platoon and you got to part 2, you're able to see the assessment. You can get started on that and start trying to do the exercises right away. If coding is completely new to you, though, I mean, you could start, but it's gonna, it's a lot of the exercises are going to take these string methods and you're going to do several of them in one exercise, and you'll have to kind of like really do your research on how they work. But yeah, while you're doing those assessments, both for the live coding and for the main application assessment, you're able to Google if you need to, because you're never expected to memorize all these all of these methods, because there's a ton of them. So yeah, you're always going to be able to look them up. Those coding challenges, I think you'll need to redo them. I will ask, but Nick may know. Seth, it seems that your email already has you as a member of this group for Slack. Okay, I found you. I added you via Slack.
Hey, Aaron, quick question.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have, I guess, homework due for each class by the end of each class?
Nothing due to me. So
Okay.
the assignments we give, which are down here at the bottom, so section 6, they are going to be on your own. So really, the data type practice and first and last name, it's for your practice only. So
Okay.
it's, really it takes all the stuff in the lesson and kind of puts in some exercises. You'll run through it. I'm going to show these here when I get to the bottom of this lesson. I think I'm getting pretty close. I'm at dictionaries now, so we're tuples.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Like when you're running the code, it's like, I don't know if it's just me, but it's kind of hard to see it. And you're in Replit, right? You're using Replit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
So I'm
not a fan of Replit, so yeah. I mean, I'll probably need to use it at least for the next few sessions, but I'm a big fan of Jupyter notebooks.
Yeah. I used Replit for the JavaScript, the code that you guys had to prep me for the code challenges, and man, I was like, I think I need an instructor. And lo and behold, we get this email, and here I am. Thank God, right? But I went through it like 3 times, right? And it's I can see some of the differences. I'm a rookie, even though I'm a technical guy. I was a network engineer, right? So, but completely different. Code is code, But you have to. I spent a lot of time in Replit, right? So you got to move the when you hit run, right? You got to move it, and then you can just clear it. I see that you put the like fruits.clear command, right? That's pretty sharp right there.
And you
So
can see it right through the output. I guess
yeah,
I
can't see anything. I don't know if everybody else can, or maybe I'm just being a whiner. I read that I'm not supposed to complain or anything like that. It was one of the emails.
Like you cannot see this part of my screen, or
I can see like the main.py right file. It's perfect, right? I can see the actual code. But when you hit it on when you run it, it's a little bit difficult to see what the output is.
Hey Rigo, I don't know if I was having that issue earlier. I zoomed out a little bit of Zoom. No pun intended. But I literally zoomed out, and I was able to see the.
Oh yeah, you know what? You're right.
Better.
My bad.
You see it?
Yeah, I minimized it. Okay, so that pretty much shows everyone I'm a knucklehead. No worries.
It was happening to me too.
Yeah, you know what? I'd rather, hey, there's no shame in my game. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it very much. I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
All right. Let's get back to this. We have hour 15 minutes. I want to give some time for more questions and some stuff over this. So let's go right into to tuple. So previously I talked about lists and how it's an order collection. For tuples are order collections as well, but they're immutable. And what I mean by immutable is you can't change it. So if you notice, like in this case here, I had fruits, right? And I appended another item onto that fruit. You can't append anything to a tuple. The only way you can add something to a tuple is to completely reassign it with a brand new collection of items. So, and that, that's important because you may have some things like coordinates or something else that really doesn't change. There's no reason to keep it as a list. Why would you even introduce the fact that you can change parts of it? Go ahead and make it immutable so you can't accidentally change it. So a tuple looks a lot like a list, except it's going to be parentheses versus square brackets, and it's going to have commas in it. And that's what really designates a tuple versus a list. So here I have fruits, and if I were to print the type of fruits, that will tell me what type of data it is. And here it shows me I have a class of a tuple that tells me that fruits is a tuple. So if I were to try to append anything to it, here it says tuple object has no attribute append because I can't change it. So, so they just have fewer methods than lists, but otherwise they behave the same. You have collections of items. So a single value tuple, though, this is kind of what I talked about, how a tuple is designated by the parentheses and the comma. You have to have a comma. So if you have a single item in there, you want to make sure you put that comma in there so you can assign it as a tuple. You can't reassign a value of a tuple either, so you can't access the index and change it. So fruits, let's say, for example, I want to change a single index of like the first index, right? Equals, let's do durian. And I try to run that. Tuple object does not support item assignment. But if this was a list, if I go back to a list and I run that, see how that little red squiggle went away because the IDE is smart enough to know that I'm trying to do something. Oh, and then print it. I have to print fruits. And run that. Now instead of apple, I have durian there. So I can change something in place. You can't do that with a tuple, and that's what they mean by immutable.
I'm so sorry, I must have missed it. How did you differentiate between the tuple and the list?
The tuple has parentheses around it and commas inside of it. So, that's,
okay.
Yeah, the parentheses will designate a tuple versus a list. And again, Tim, I mentioned tuple is good for things like coordinates or, maybe like a birthday or something else, things that don't really change ever. It's like your birthday is never going to change, or somebody's birthday is never going to change. So you can assign them like a tuple. Yeah, like pi, like a constant or something. Yeah, it can be entry in a tuple. Yep. Let's move into now. Let's move into a different type of collection. And again, remember this is going to be 10,000-foot view, so I'm not going to show you everything with dictionaries because the dictionaries themselves are just a very complicated data type, and it takes a bit to wrap your mind around it. But I did just want to kind of give you, some exposure to it. So a dictionary is an unordered collection of key value pairs, and you can change them. So in this example here, we have a dictionary, and the dictionary is designated by those curly braces and the colon. So if I were to copy this over into my REPL and put it in there, and let's go ahead and clear this output. Where's clear? Is it right? Clear history. Here it is. So I have a person and I have these key value pairs. So I have these curly braces, which designate my dictionary. And then I have two entries in my dictionary. I have this key value pair, which is name and then Alice. And then I have this key value pair, which is age and 25. And so this name is the key and the value is Alice. And then the key of this person, the key of age equals the value of 25. So if I wanted to see the person's name, how I would access it is with the key. So if I want to print Alice, I would say print person, and then I would give it the key. And so here I would say name. What I'm saying is, hey, I want to print the value of the person's name. So I use the key to access a value. And this is a concept that's it's gonna throw you for a loop when you're doing some of these exercises. It did for me for the longest time, but I'm gonna get back Alice. Again, I'm trying to access the key, the name key of that person, and that is Alice. In this example, you have another person with another key. So in this case, we have city. So you can see how you can expand it to kind of show attributes of something. The key value pairs kind of give you that information. This data type is very similar to what's like the language of the web, if you will, how websites talk to each other. Yep, they're equivalent to JavaScript objects, or JSON looks a lot like dictionaries. A little different, but you can convert back and forth between dictionaries and JSON with when you're working with Python and dictionaries. Yep, they are like objects. Yep. You can have nested dictionaries. So if you have you can have a person, and then you can have some attributes of that person. For example, their name, their age, their first name, last name, age, birthday, and then the location, so on and so forth. And you can have location, state, California, city, Los Angeles. That can expand more and more and more. So just the dictionary itself, again, 10,000-foot view, it's unordered and it's only set by key value pairs. And so it's going to throw you for a loop if you've never worked with it before. But I promise you will get used to it. And soon, once you get used to it and you can use it really effectively, it's very powerful. And you can do a lot of cool stuff with dictionaries when it comes to data manipulation. So we do have some methods. These are pretty important because when it comes to dictionaries, because it's unordered, there are there are ways to still evaluate the data set in its entirety. So like with lists, it's ordered, so you can just loop over it one by one to see your items. With dictionaries, you can't do that because it's not ordered. It's set by key value pairs. So there are methods to kind of pull all the keys out or pull all the values out to loop over them in the result of those functions or those methods. So if I were to take, if I want to see all the keys, I can say print person dot keys. And if I were to print that, I'm going to get back this object. It's not a list, but it's a dictionary object showing me the keys of the dictionary. Same with values. I can get the values there, which is just the values, no keys. And then lastly, I can do items. And then I can see both name, Alice, age 25. If I wanted to add something to this dictionary, all you have to do is give it a key and then run an assignment operator. So if the key doesn't exist, it'll create one and put it in the object. So in this case, let's go ahead and add a key of like, let's do city. So I have person. I'm going to go ahead and give it a new key. So I would just do this. And then I would say, well, it's equal to Dallas. And then if I were to print person, now I have 3 items in my dictionary. I have a key of city and the value of Dallas.
Is the script running as a dictionary because the first line of code is assigning it dictionary, so then the next line of code is just sort of like adding it on to that?
Right. So when I'm running this, it's running top to bottom every time. And so it's kind of resetting it back to this. So if I ran this again, and printed before I added this, I would just get this back. But yeah, so I'm assigning a dictionary to person every time I run this, and then I'm adding my key value pair to it. I would like to show you a couple of these methods here. In this case here, if I want to, instead of listing out, let's say you have a dictionary of, 500 items in there, like if you just list everything out, it'd be hard to see it, right? But you can run the get method to see what you're going to return. So in this case, I want to say like, I'm just going to call it person city equals person dot get. And I'm going to say city. So and I can print. If I run that, I can get the value for the key that I provide. So in this case, the get method will get the value tied to that key. Remember, when you're working with a dictionary, you use a key to get a value. You use a key to open the door to get the value. That's the kind of a way I always thought about help wrap my mind around using key to get a value. And there are plenty more operations in here. You can delete dictionaries, which is a pretty final thing to delete, so you don't want to do that often. You can update it with new values. Yep, just like we mentioned before, we have JavaScript has dictionaries. Most of the program languages have an unordered collection like a Python dictionary. Any questions on just a basic, overview of what a dictionary is or how it's used to store data? And we can go over these as well. When I finish the lecture, we can go back and revisit some of these so we can see how they're used. I just wanted to get through the rest of these methods to show you what they are, so then we can get into some question answers.
Hey, Aaron, real quick.
Yeah.
For line number 3, why did you use a regular bracket instead of a curly bracket?
So when I use a curly bracket, in this context, I'm giving my variable name first. When I open with the square bracket, that what I'm doing is I'm kind of using that as a key, if you will. So it's not like assigning a list or anything. So that's one thing, as part of this, learning how the syntax of Python works. You can have the same symbols for different things. You're about to see that with sets here in just a minute. But yeah, so in this case, I'm using this bracket to kind of locate a key. Just like with a list, I would use that to find an index. I can't index off a dictionary because they're unordered. So name is not necessarily in the first spot in memory because it's a key to a certain hashed memory location.
Gotcha.
So
then parentheses could have also been used then as well instead of brackets in line number 3.
No.
No.
I can show you. Yeah, I can show you. Yeah, you remember what this stands for? When you do like a variable, then you have a open and closed parenthesis.
String.
That's a function. So remember, like the print when you have the print open close parentheses. And I'm going to go over functions. I have a whole section on functions, and it'll be the 3rd lesson this week, and how you use them. But that's the syntax for a function. Yeah, you have to use square brackets to access a key.
Perfect.
In
Thank
the dictionary.
you.
Yep.
So if the parentheses equals a function, is there like for the square brackets, does that just annotate a method, or am I not understanding that correctly?
So you can almost, I mean, there's some differences, but you can equate methods and functions as being the same thing. So in this case, this syntax here has nothing to do with functions or anything. What this syntax is because person is already a dictionary. When I put this in here, this key, I am designating a new key on person because it doesn't exist. And I'm saying, hey, I have a new key, and then I'm using the single equal sign. Like I remember from the very beginning, I said that's assigned to a value. That's exactly what I'm doing here. So yeah, the syntax of the square bracket is nothing more but the context of this person variable being a dictionary already. And a dictionary is designated by the curly braces and the colons. So if you have curly braces and colons, you know you have a dictionary because you have key value pairs there at that point. The next data type I have, which I'm going to get into, is called a set. Also uses curly braces, but it looks a little different. And so I can show you that now. So here in this example, we have my set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you notice, there are also curly braces here, but there's no colons. And so now I know that is a set. And a set is an unordered collection of unique elements, but you can change it. So a bit of a difference between if you think of like a set is almost like a list, but it's not, because it's unordered and it's only going to be unique values. And I can show you how it behaves by giving you a list instead. So let's change this to my list. And let's add some duplicating values in here. So we'll add a 1, another 4. Okay, so we have multiple 1s and multiple 4s. I can then make a new variable called mySet, and then I can use my assignment operator to then run the set method on my list. And so what this does is this becomes a method, because remember, I have a keyword and then it's open and close parentheses. That tells me I have some sort of method or function. And I'm putting the list I just assigned into there. And so now it's going to say, I'm going to create a set out of my list. And then I can go ahead and print my list and print my set. Oh, I forgot to make that square bracket, so it's not going to show up right. I totally casted a set before even assigning it. Let's do it that way. Okay, so here I have my list, and see how the square bracket, that designates the list. So it's going to give me everything. A set is only going to give me the unique values from that list. And so it's unordered, and what that means is when I grab the one, like a 1 from this list, and turn it into a set, right? Which one did I grab? You don't know. You don't know which 1 or which 4 it grabbed to put into the set. So you can't use like indexing to locate something on a set, because it's unordered. It's not in a set order like it is in a list, which means the memory locations in the RAM are not going to be sequential. And so there's other ways to locate it, but you can't locate it through the traditional indexing.
So you mean like if you were trying to change one of the values in your list, you wouldn't be able to do that?
Or you talk about the set?
For the set?
Yeah, like if I wanted to change an item in that set, I couldn't do it with like typical indexing.
Okay.
Yeah. But remember, everything's unique, so I wouldn't have to worry about indexing, if you will, because I know there's only going to be 1 3 in there. So I can just say remove the 3 and it'll remove. So if I were to say my set dot remove 3, I remove the 3. So again, I printed my list. So this code ran from the beginning again, assigned a new variable called my list, then printed it. Or assigned that, and then assigned the set as a set of the list, then printed both. So I printed my list, printed my set, and then I ran the remove method on my set, and I removed the 3, and I was able to print it. So let's start with Jordan's question. So does a set organize the list in numerical order? Some IDEs, and I think some of the latest iteration of Python will try to take order into account and give it to you in some sort of order, but the memory addresses themselves will not be in order. What real-world application would sets be useful? For example, if you needed to find something unique or like uniqueness in a big collection of data. So let's say you have a bunch of like emails and less, yeah, social security number. Let's say for example, like you're hosting, you want to host like a big drawing, for example, and you don't want people to enter more than once, right? So they enter with their email, right? Well, let's say they try to enter anyway and they put their email in a bunch of times, right? It's only going to take one entry of that email as an entry. So yeah, it's like taking just one value. It's just like unique values. So yep. And then here in that same token, can you not use things like insert with a set? There's many more operations in here. And you can simply Google like Python set methods. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that now, just so you can see what we do have available. So there's a lot more than what you see, because again, this is just 10,000 foot view. But you can use like update to update the set with another set, or any other kind of like thing you can iterate over. Unions, intersections. You can think of those Venn diagrams with like the colored circles and how they intersect. Like really, when you're taking a union or intersection, you're taking like that middle port. The intersection is the middle portion of those Venn diagrams, and you have the two sets. And so I'll just show an example of that one real quick. So I have set one equals to my bracket, right? And then if you look, the intersection method here, I'm saying, hey, I want to get the intersection of set one and set two. I want to get the intersection of the left set to the right set. And if we have 2, 3, 5, and 6. And if you look, those are the only common values between those two sets. That's what intersection is.
What? What just happened?
I said my stomach is hurting, and she said, "You'd be fine. Stop acting." Yo,
we got somebody unmuted.
We need to remove word that.
There we go. Conversely, I can say the difference. So I can run. What's going to happen here if I run that?
It's going to show you the numbers that are different between the two sets. Like
run that.
So
8, 1, and 7. It's not going to include 9 because I would need to put the set 2 over here and go it that way, and then I should get the 9 and the 4. So when you run difference, you're going to return what is different from the other set compared to this one. So I'm going to get the values that are in this one that are different from the one you're comparing it to. So you have to swap them if you want to see the differences. There are others as well. I think we have the symmetric difference. So it has the differences of both sets. So do symmetric. And run that. And that will give me all of them. Any questions on that quick view of sets and how like we can we can do some different methods with them. Again, this is not all of them. This is a quick view. We have plenty more to cover for sure. There we go. Nice. So Jacob added the graphic for a union of a set. So a union will give you everything. So if you ran their union update, which I didn't run that one in this example. But this is what I was talking about with the Venn diagram. There's like two circles, and you have the overlapping, which is a slightly different color. The intersection is that middle portion, and then you have your, your symmetric difference is only the outside sections and so forth. I think I have some other good ones. All right. Let's move back. Let's move to the next data type, which is, it's not the last data type, but it's really the kind of like it's really going to be the core of what you're going to get to when you're running a computer program or a computer script, a Python script. And that is a Boolean. Booleans are, the binary nature of Booleans is really how computers run. When you're running a web page, when you're running a machine learning algorithm, when you're running a backend and you're trying to figure out where to put someone's name, or if their name already exists in a database, you're always going to break your problem down into a yes or no question. Everything about the program you're running is going to be broken down into yes or no questions. And that's where Booleans come in. The Booleans really have those binary values of true and false. And this is one of the key things to remember when you're writing programs and you're getting into coding. You want to break everything down to those yes or no questions. And sometimes it takes a bit of a mental leap to kind of break that problem down. And we're going to go over a section of computational thinking to help you with that. So in this case here, in the examples we have, we can set a variable to equal a Boolean. In this case, we have like is student equals true. And we could also have another attribute of them is register equal false. And we could put both of these into like a dictionary to as Booleans to kind of keep flags on different keys. And then we can say, hey, if is student and is registered, if they both equal true, then I want my program to take them to give them their class schedule. But if they're a student but they're not registered, don't return a schedule. Like that's a good example of showing how you can use Booleans to make a program like go to a certain branch of logic depending on what's true or not. And as a developer, you have to think about all those potential pathways, if you will, in that logic flow using Booleans to help you with that. One of the key things to remember with Python is true and false are one of those reserved words you can't reassign. It's going to show up in an IDE or online when you type it with a capital T and capital F for true and false respectively. They're going to show up a different color. They're going to show up a different way. You don't want to put them in quotes because then they're not really Booleans. They're just the string true or the string false. And then if it's lowercase, then it's going to show up as an unrecognized value because you never assigned false like this word. It won't show up as anything because you haven't assigned it as a string. It's really not good practice to ever use lowercase true or lowercase false. You kind of just want to avoid it in your code at all costs. Use something else because you don't want to mix it up. It's always going to be capital T and capital F for your trues and false. With Booleans, you can have logical operations like and, so you can do like if statements to say if like my example I gave you with the student, right? So if is student and is registered, if they both equal true, then do something, send them, give them their classes. But if there is a student, that's true, but they're not registered, then send them the registration link. You would want to use like the and operator then. So in the case of Python, the fact that something exists will already be true. So so if I have like is student, jeez, there is a lot of like lag on this one. So and then I just do else. There is a lot of lag today. So here I initially ran it. I had both is student is registered is true. I wrote a little quick comparison. So I said, hey, if is student, which this is the same thing as saying and is registered, that is the same exact thing. Or is true, not equals. So is true and it is registered is true. Doing it without actually saying is true works with Python because the mere existence of something will default to being true. And there's a bit of a little bit of complications with that. And we're actually next lesson we're explain more conditionals and truthy falsy type statements. So I'll go into detail with a lot of those. Oh, that's a good question by Jordan. So our comparison operators, like the double equals, are those type restrictive. Between like float and integer, as long as they're exactly the same. So if you ran the expression 0 and then the is equal to the 0 float, that will end up being true. Because Python's smart enough to know the different types. Between strings and integer, I can't remember. I can put it in here. Let's find out. I believe it's no. And it's false. Yep. And that is true. Here we have the simple mathematical. So if you remember your mathematical symbols, you have your greater than, less than, not equal to, which is the exclamation point, with the equal sign. That's not equal to. You have greater than, equal to, and less than, equal to. All these symbols, just like you learned in your math class, they apply with Python, and it does also use these. And they're really powerful, actually, to use with logic flow, and you use it all the time. So here we have, we say print 0 is not equal to 1, which will come back as true. Greater than or equal to 1. And that ends up being false because 0 is not greater than or equal to 1. Any questions on the quick Boolean section? Again, we're going to go over this next class session. We're going to be going over the conditionals and truthy falsy. So we're going to dive really big into the Booleans and writing conditional statements to help get to a true or false, because that's really key into development. Okay, I mentioned mutability already with lists and tuples.
Changing or being unable to change.
Mutable data types, again, are lists and dictionaries, and they can be modified in place. So like I showed you with the fruits and list, I could take a list of items and just go to an index of 1 and just reassign it in place, and it will be just fine. There's no issues with Python doing that. Strings, I did not mention, are immutable, which means you can't change a string in place. I can't go access an index in a string and change it to another character. I would have to reassign the entire string. Same with tuples. So you can create them, and if you want to change it, you can, but you have to change the entire thing. You have to totally reassign it. You can reassign the same thing with different stuff in it. That's allowed, but you can't just change one item in place. Any questions on mutability versus immutability? It can be a bit of a concept to wrap your mind around. It's easy to get around immutability by just doing reassigning. You'll do it all the time when developing. But with that, we've reached our conclusion of the lecture. And we've covered just the essentials of just the basic data types and some of the methods involved. We will go more in depth with this to really help you do those assignments, because really what we're setting you up to do is to finish those challenges. And knowing this foundational stuff at the very basic level, how to manipulate a list, how to turn a string into a list, how to turn a big paragraph into a list of words that you can then evaluate, change, and do things, how to, all that data manipulation we're going to teach you in this course. So it's important to expose yourself to all these methods that we're listing here, and do your Google searching and look up, additional methods here. This here, all I did was Google set methods, Python set methods, what I put in Google, and then I have W3 Schools, which is one of the big hits you're going to get. And this will give you an example of how to use. So I can just click this method, and I can see how to use, difference, for example, when running that. Any questions, any other material that anybody would like me to go over again before I dive into going over the assignments? Does anybody still not have access to the GitHub or to Slack? Sure, I can go over method versus function. I don't know if that was you that tried to speak. I don't know if that was you that tried to speak. Anyway, this is a Google research search here. So in Python, really the only difference between a method and a function is methods are kind of limited because they apply to a certain thing. Functions, if they're just written on the top level of program, can be called from anywhere. And when you learn about Python classes, which we don't cover in this course, methods are kind of inherent to a certain area of code, if you will. So like the print method, for example, only deals with returning something to a console, and your union set method only deals with sets, and it's kind of looped in that area. So does that kind of answer? It's really not much difference. Like a method and a function they're going to look the same. So they're going to have, you're going to call it, it's going to have some sort of input or no input, and it's going to have some sort of output. So it's going to give you something, right? So when I run the print function, what I'm doing is I'm giving it this evaluation, and then the print function takes it and then spits out the result. So it's going to then spit out the result of whatever I input there. So. Okay, I'm going to roll into the assignment so you can kind of see what it's all about if you haven't already opened it. So what this is just a way for you to type in, it's a way for you to kind of run code on your own and kind of see what's going on. And what it does, a lot of stuff you don't have to touch. The only places you're going to be really typing are going to be under what we have these task numbers. So, and then we can go over this one together. You can kind of see what it's about. So it says write a variable named fruits, holding a list with the following values: apple, oranges, grapes, and pears. So, like the example I already had, we already write out fruits for you, and we even put the assignment operator. Then you want to type out the rest of it. So you want to type in an open bracket with the string, apples and oranges and so on and so forth. Let me see what's going on. Let's see. Nick, are you still on?
Aaron, if I could recommend, you may have to fork it with that button right there.
That's what I was wanting to know, because I haven't actually forked from Replit before. So it's right here.
Yeah, and then you can create kind of your own thing, and that should be able to work kind of like what you were doing in the other with the other tab.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I haven't used Replit like this before. So Jupyter notebooks are my thing, man. So like that. There we go. Now I'll fork to my own. There we go. And now you can put your own entries in. Thanks for that. Okay.
How did you comment it out like that?
Oh, just push if you're on a Windows machine, Control and
I'm on a
then the
Mac.
/. If you're on a Mac, it's Command. The Command /. Let me just go ahead and comment these out first so we can see the result of at least one test case without getting a error for now. That's gonna be an error.
So I got the same syntax error you did, Aaron. Does that mean I have to go through and update these like what you're doing now too?
Right. So you'll have to, if you want to do it one at a time, or you can just wait till you do the entire exercise and run it. I'm just getting rid of it so I can show you like the first one really. That's really all I'm doing. Yeah. I'm going to have to keep these actually because welcome message, substring. Just making an empty string. So with the, also just give you guys some, this is the first time we're running this course, so there's going to be some hiccups. We do welcome feedback.
Sorry, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, there we go. Finally, my speakers popped over. Okay, so I'm going to keep fruit counts as well. I'm gonna have to keep a lot of these actually. Make it like a string or something.
Hey,
I saw
Aaron.
something and
Sorry, go ahead, Athena.
no, you're fine.
I was just gonna ask, hey, Aaron. So for the purpose of us just wanting to just see like in this assignment specifically, maybe we just want to run the very first part that you're trying to run. In Replit, would we just be able to kind of, I guess, copy and paste that very first task and in that plus sign and then kind of just, bounce back and forth between I guess those tabs within Replit?
What do you mean? I guess I'm not.
So on your page, there's a plus sign in your Replit right there. Would we just be, yeah, and would that open up a new tab, I guess, within Replit so we could just not have to
So you would need to you can create a new file. So you can create a file like that and say let's say question 1 or 1.py. Right. And then so I make a question 1, then I can
just run it.
Yeah, so I can do that. And then I can also take my assertion because the assertion is going to be the test case. So I go in here and then put this down here. and then run this. So what it's going to do is it's going to, so it says write a variable named fruits holding a list of the following values: apples, oranges, grapes, and pears. That was my first one, my first task, right? And then I went through and I printed test case 1 passed, and that's going to equal true because my fruit is going to equal answers at the index of 0. And so this is really kind of like a list, just a bunch of items holding correct answers, and it's evaluating those answers based on what I have in my. So here I have assigned fruits to this. Now I'm going to compare it to what's in the answers, and it's going to give me true or false. And that's what this is doing. Test case 1 passed. Test case 2 did not pass because my length of fruits, again, this is a method I didn't show you with a list, but this is like the length function, or the length method, which tells me how long a list or a collection is, or a string. And the length of my list is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 items. So until you add a new fruit, kiwi, to the list, which you'll do that right here in this next task, using one of the methods, you're not going to get a test case passing there until you add something in there. Now, so you'll add kiwi to the list by using one of the methods, like append, if you will. So I could say, okay, well, fruits.append, and then I'm going to do kiwi. And then I'll go ahead and take this whole thing over because I don't have it in that new file. So you can do it this way if you want. I can run that.
I'm sorry, Aaron. How did you create that question 1? Is that like a new file that you created?
Yeah, right here. So you have this new file. So after you fork it over from the main replit, you can then just make sure you pull this in. Like if you want to do it this way, make sure you pull this topping, because this is going to pull in the answers from answers.py.
Yeah.
To run this statement. You don't want to touch it or mess with it. Just you can copy it over if you want.
Yeah.
If you want to take this in stages. Otherwise, you can just try and attempt the whole thing by just following the instructions, and you can do it that way too.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to do it piece by piece, so I'm going to try to.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, doing it by stages.
Let's take a look at this real quick. I don't know what this is. I'll take a look at this.
And so, Aaron, real quick, once again, every time we want to access the assignments, we're always going to have to fork it over or click on the fork button so that it can open up in Replit, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And it should fork over to your account. You've made an account. Right?
Could I add something?
Yeah.
So like I said, I did the JavaScript stuff, right, like 3 times, and Replit was confusing at first, right? So I'm with you on that, right? So after about the 3rd time of doing all the exercises, make sure you open up your Replit account first. Then you can then from the information that they give you, where it says fork it over, and it'll open up into your Replit.
Yeah.
To your account, you'll name it, and then you're good to go. It's pretty simple.
Sweet.
I wish someone would have told me, because I pulled my hair out trying to figure it out. But it's pretty simple. And there's a lot of latency as far as the network is concerned, as far as the app. It all depends upon the time of day. Like right now, everybody's on it after work, probably, trying to learn how to code and whatever it is that they do. So if you hit it in the morning, depending upon your full-time jobs or whatever, it's not as bad. But it's not, I wouldn't recommend Replit, but it's, it is what it is. It'll serve a purpose for what we're doing. Hope that helped.
Yeah. And so Daniel, I mean, the Replit account is when you log in. So when you make when you go to replit.com, you have to make an account. And then when you go to this one, right? So you're gonna make your account and you go to this one. One of the challenges, you have to fork it over, and when you hit fork, it's gonna know what you're signed into. And it's going to grab it and put it just a copy of that code into your account, so you can then mess with it. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, when I go to that individual, like the one that you have listed for question 1, it seems to be still pulling from the main. It keeps giving me that. I get a syntax error and it says line 25, but I mean they're from main.py, but I don't even have a line 25 in that question 1 separate tab that was just made.
Okay, so you're saying, I'm going to go back to here.
Like, could you run that? Did you run it already to see if it worked on yours?
Let me just go here.
I think it was the creating data types one.
No, it was the other one, right? Yeah, let me go back.
Yeah, it's like creating data types.
So what was your question?
So when it ran, it said syntax error line 25, but like kind of like yours, I don't even have I guess you do have a line 25 in yours. But you're on the main PY. So if you go to the question 1 and then you run it, so you only have 15 lines. What happens when you run that in that section? Because that's the point of it. You're kind of breaking it down, right? And so so it's still pulling like from line 27 main PY. It's just, it seems, I don't know. Yeah. Seems like it's still pulling from the main one.
Let's see what's happening. So what it's doing is, let's see here. Because you're running it from here. And I'm still running. I'm still running main.py. So you're still going to get that error. Let me see.
I think somewhere in your terminal side on your right window, you can toggle which file you're running. I haven't been in there in a little bit, so I don't quite remember how to do it in Replit.
Yeah. Maybe I can do it here. No, that's a good question. I'll play around with a little more so I can get it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, obviously it's broken off into this one so that we can like break it down piece by piece. So I was just wondering, but whenever you can, Aaron, thanks.
Yeah, you can also, I mean, I think you can also just, for example.
What was the question?
So I was just saying, Eric, that when Aaron opened up that separate file on the left called question 1, it was, the point of that was to kind of break down each task and to
Right.
be able to kind of, but when you run it, it seems to still be pulling from the main file. So it's kind of defeating the purpose of why we have that separate file. It still seems to be pulling from the main file. Or
So
Well,
I got rid of question 1 and I went back to main and I just commented out everything below where I wanted to stop. So there's some spots that'll have like a double comment symbol, that the hashtag there. The hashtag just signifies to Python that you have a comment. And so you can get rid of, like, it won't read that code until you get rid of that symbol. And so when I hit command question mark again, I get rid of one of them, right? But now these will pop up again. I can mess with them. So you can either comment them out individually, or you can just highlight the entire thing and just comment everything out below where you want to stop, and then you won't get errors if you do that.
what do you mean to comment out?
So if you look here, like, see this little hashtag thing, it's green. You see how it's green, right?
Yeah.
Python's not going to read this. It doesn't know what that means. But if I were to uncomment it or get rid of that symbol, right? See how it changed color?
Kind of like activates it.
Now Python will try and read that, and it's going to give me errors. It's going to be like, I don't know what capital I is. I have no idea what that is. It's going to scream at me. But if you comment it out, you can put anything you want, and it won't read it. And so that's what I was doing initially, to kind of hide some of these coordinates, but then they were being used later on in the test case, and it was going to give me errors anyway. And so I decided, you know what? You can just highlight everything. So just go all the way down to the bottom. And then if you hit, the shortcut is to put a command question mark or control question mark, and it will put a comment symbol in front of every line of code that you highlighted. If it already existed, it will still remain a comment, but if it didn't have one, it will have one now, and it won't be read by Python. And so then you can just uncomment sections as you need to. So that's probably the easier way to do it. And so in this case, we can go here and just uncomment this section here. And then I know that coordinates, I need to mess with that. So it says create a tuple named coordinates with 2 elements, 3 and 7. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So coordinates equals, remember, tuples are an open parentheses, 3, and then a comma, 7. And then let me go ahead and do this one as well. I'll just comment this one out for now.
Sweet, that worked.
Sorry, I have one that I hadn't done yet, so I'll just go here. So let's say it's, create a tuple named coordinates with 2 elements, 3 and 7, right? So now I have it, and it's going to run, and now I have test case 4 has passed now, because that is the correct answer for this problem. Coordinates. So this tuple named coordinates equals, so double equals answers at the index of 3. So I want to go to answers here and go answers the index of 3, right? So it's index 0, 1, 2, and 3. If you think about, this is actually a pretty cool, way to see how this is working, right? So answers is a list of items. So it's an open bracket. That means the list. This is the first item in that list, this whole other list. Then you have a comma. And this is the second item in the list. And then this is the third item in the list here. And then this is the fourth item in the list. But remember, we count from 0 in Python up. So this is saying, hey, answers at the index of 3, which is really the fourth item, 0, 1, 2, 3. Does that equal what I just designated as coordinates, 3, 7? Well, yes, it does. 3, 7, or the tuple 3, 7 equals coordinates. That's what this is saying. It's saying, hey, print this statement. This is a string. Test case 4 passed. Coordinates is what I just defined up here. It's saying, hey, print these 2 statements. Print this string. And then print this Boolean statement, which is, does coordinates equal answers at the index of 3? Well, answers the index of 3 is here, right here. So it's evaluating whether those are the same. And that's true because they do. If this was 3, 8, and I ran this again, it's false because it's not the same. Oh, I closed it by accident. There it goes. Does everybody understand? If not, it's fine. A lot of it's going to be magic right now, just how it works. But you can do that commenting trick to take your tests one at a time if you need to.
How do you move the comment one line by one line? Like after you get done with one test, how do you activate that line? You just remove the hashtag?
Yeah, you can just hit command or control question mark and it'll get rid of that. You see that?
It'll get rid of all of them or just the next one?
It'll just get rid of the first one.
Oh.
Yeah. So in this case, I had one already there when I ran it. But if I were to highlight, for example, let's highlight all of this right here, right? And then I run, if I try and get rid of my comment, it's going to get rid of the first one in every line that has one. And then line 33 only had one, so now it becomes active code at that point. If you see how that works. See how I'm adding a comment to all of them. So it's adding doubles to the ones that already have it. And then I'm getting rid of it as well.
So in ours, it will uncomment everything because you had originally commented out one line already. So
Right.
if we,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you just highlight everything and run a comment, then you only have one to worry about. And you can highlight sections to uncomment as needed if you want to do it that way. Yeah, you can also just do all the problems before running your test cases, and you shouldn't have the issue with some undefined variables. You can do it that way too. So we're reaching the end of our time. I did want to thank you for coming, and I really do care about like veterans and getting education. I thought it was when I went through Code Platoon, it was amazing. I learned so much. I didn't learn enough because it was so fast, but they got me to where I can get a job and then learn more on the job, and then move right into giving back and teaching. So I am really passionate about this, and I'm passionate about you guys learning, as much as you can, and hopefully, every one of you gets in, passes the assessment. You can get into Whiskey Platoon and go through the full cohort, because it is a lot. And this feeling of being overwhelmed, which you probably are feeling a little bit, is gonna, sorry to say, but it's probably gonna be a natural feeling, because learning how to code in a boot camp setting is very, it's almost like an information fire hose. And having the resources, like being able to Google those tools in your tool belt, and learning how to think algorithmically, doing that quickly, and learning that skill will really help you when it comes to learning new disciplines and new ways of doing things, and then learning how the language of the web works and how to structure a backend and all those other things when it comes to coding. So I'll be here with you for this adventure, and I'll do what I can. Just to let you know, I will be on Slack periodically. I do have a day job. So I work as a developer full-time on 2 different projects, but I do have Slack on my phone, and I work from home, so I can just get on. If I need to answer a question, I can. We're going to have TAs available to help with questions as well. So that channel on Slack is like super important. Just put your stuff out there. If you have a question on something, ask it. Someone's willing to answer. You've already had students pop in and answer and help me with stuff that I'm not quite familiar with when it comes to like Replit and things like that. There's so many things in tech that somebody's going to know the answer to that you may not. So put the question out there. It doesn't matter how silly it sounds. Like, wait, can you tell me how to manipulate a string again? I've forgotten how to do that, and I'm doing it for a job. Like, sometimes the obvious answer is just not there because you're not thinking of it. So the Slack channel is yours to really ask questions and ping off each other, and do these assignments together, and get yourself to the point where you can pass the assessments, do the live coding. That's really what it's for. But yeah, we've reached the end of the time. So I did want to thank you again, and we'll be seeing you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.